Mr. Skilling and Kenneth Lay, Enron's founder, were convicted after the Houston-based energy company collapsed in 2001 in one of the most high-profile cases of corporate fraud in America. Jeffrey K. Skilling, the former chief executive of Enron whose lies contributed to the sudden collapse of the energy company in one of the country's most high-profile cases of corporate fraud, was released from federal custody on Thursday after serving more than 12 years in prison, the federal authorities said. Mr. Skilling, 65, was released from a halfway house in Texas, his final stop in the federal prison system after being held at a prison camp in Alabama and a prison in Colorado, the Federal Bureau of Prisons said on Friday. A lawyer for Mr. Skilling did not respond to a message seeking comment. Mr. Skilling was one of several Enron leaders who guided the company through a spectacular rise in the 1990s, as it evolved from a sleepy pipeline operator into one of the world's dominant energy companies by reshaping the way natural gas and electricity were bought and sold. He was later convicted for his leading role in a complex fraud and conspiracy scheme that led to the company's stunning fall, which culminated in one of the largest corporate bankruptcies in American history on December 2, 2001. Mr. Skilling had abruptly quit 4 months earlier, in August 2001, after less than a year as chief executive. His resignation stunned Wall Street analysts and raised suspicions, despite his assurances at the time that his departure had nothing to do with Enron. But in private, Enron executives knew that its accounting improprieties, which were used to hide financial losses, would soon unravel for the world to see. In October of that year, Enron announced a $600 million loss in the latest financial quarter and a $1.2 billion reduction in shareholder equity, almost immediately prompting the Securities and Exchange Commission to open an investigation into the company. It was only a matter of time before the company would be revealed as a house of cards and Enron's crooked E logo would become a symbol of corporate shame. The fall of Enron cost shareholders billions of dollars and its employees their retirement savings. Its demise ushered in a wave of prosecutions that rooted out accounting fraud at other companies like WorldCom, HealthSouth and Adelphia Communications. Along with Kenneth Lay, Enron's founder and chairman, Mr. Skilling was convicted on fraud and conspiracy charges in 2006 after a 56-day trial. Specifically, Mr. Skilling was convicted of 18 counts of fraud and conspiracy and 1 count of insider trading for his central role in the accounting schemes that masked Enron's debts and weak finances from shareholders and regulators. Mr. Lay was found guilty on 6 counts of fraud and conspiracy and 4 counts of bank fraud. He died about a month after the trial, and his conviction was vacated. Separately, Andrew S. Fastow, the former chief financial officer who helped construct Enron's fraud scheme, pleaded guilty in 2004 to fraud and stealing from the company. A judge reduced his initial prison sentence to 6 years from 10 years because he helped federal prosecutors with the convictions of Mr. Skilling and Mr. Lay. Of the group, Mr. Skilling was given the harshest punishment. He was initially sentenced to more than 24 years in prison, but that term was later reduced to 14 years in part because of a mistake made by a judge in interpreting the federal sentencing guidelines. In exchange for his reduced sentence, Mr. Skilling gave up about $42 million, all of which was to be distributed to victims of Enron's fraud. During Mr. Skilling's time in prison, his parents and his 20-year-old son have died.